play where everyone came together to achieve a common task. We developed and launched Boot in the Academy system. We expanded the onboarding team by making it the responsibility of the entire org and not just a single wing. So did it work? And for the most part, with the help of everybody in this organization, yeah, we think it did. The org is the strongest it's ever been, and our achievements are many. We just had our largest org versus org event in Vanguard history. We have had over 10 organized medium to large scale events in the last 10 weeks. Our instructors and their trainings they provide are injecting competency into us all. We've had 25% org population growth in 60 days, largely thanks to Novak's TikTok video, but also that TikTok video was just showing stuff that we do within this organization that sets us apart, and that's why it became so popular. We have regular weekly events. Vanguard is competitive across Arena Commander and Star Marine leaderboards. We're building excellent relationships in the larger community. We're making friends with different orgs, and they really want to play with us and against us. Our promotion ceremonies are awesome, and attendance is high, and they're a lot of fun. We also just had the main CIG developer in charge of Arena join our Discord, which is showing that we're becoming more relevant in this arena of PvP. And now we're ready to take another step.
Sorry to interrupt. Your voice is a bit muffled. You seem to be coming in and out or something like that.
How's that? Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. So now we're ready to take another step. We're going to officially put these efforts into a more defined org progression flow, and it looks like this. You're going to enlist in the organization, which is orientation. You're going to go through Boot. Once you're through Boot, you're going to join the Academy, and then you're going to join a First Fleet unit. And the First Fleet in the Academy will continue to, provide trainings. The First Fleet will, do that stuff in the game, and Academy will do more trainings. First Fleet will work with Academy to make sure that the trainings are the things that are necessary to train, for people to do First Fleet type things, and so on and so forth. So where are the wings? Well, they're right where they have always been, in the Academy. Wings have always been training academies. They've always been focused on growing new Vanguardians into learning how to have the critical skills that they need in order to be able to play with us in the verse. This should look super familiar to everybody. Security, industries, medtech, frontier, command and initiative, and all of the things that they teach and train underneath them. Maybe I've missed a thing or two here or there, but you guys get the idea. So I go through orientation, I go to Boot, and then I join the Academy where I can start taking these, learning these critical skills. Which looks pretty much the same as what we have today. So what's actually different? This is the important part. Wings, divisions, squadrons, and groups will live inside of First Fleet. Why? Why is the fleet a better place for squadrons than the wings? And it's simple. Fleet units can draw from the entire member base with no concern about which wing you are from. By intermixing members through First Fleet, siloing will decrease because members are playing across the groups. So here it all is shown in one piece. You can see at the bottom, I start through orientation, I make my way to Boot. Eventually I go to the Academy where I get wing specialist driven certifications and training. And then from there, I then kind of graduate up into the Vanguard fleet, of which there is the First Fleet now. And there's some nuance here that we'll talk about a little bit later in terms of seeing that there's plurality in the fleets here. Within the First Fleet up here, I can see that, I have all of these First Fleet units that are sitting here. I've got the Kraken Trading Company, the Unity, Vice Squadron, Fleet Services, Defiant, Magellan, Rock Raiders, and so on and so forth. These are manifestations of the actual gameplay that we have in the actual gameplay that we participate in when we're actually in the verse playing. You'll also see there's some nuance here about if I go inactive, then I get moved into a bucket. Quantum and I jokingly called it the Midnight Zone one time, and it went on the slide, so there it sticks. The Midnight Zone is going to have some limit of Discord privileges. So if you're not playing with us, then you're going to have some limitations on what you can see in the Discord. First Fleet is a place for players. It's a place for people who are actively playing and participating in the org. And, so the privilege of being in those channels is going to be focused on the players that are doing those things. When you return from the Midnight Zone, then you move back into First Fleet. We have this concept of a garrison, which is I'm part of Fleet, but I'm not affiliated with a unit. And then from garrison, you'll shift down into a fleet. Maybe you'll do some more academy training, ultimately to prepare yourself to go back into a unit, or you'll talk to a unit about just readopting you right back in. So you pick up right where you left off and come back to it. So let's take a closer look at the fleet. Some of these things look very familiar because they've been around for a long time. Some of them will look very, very new. We've been doing a lot of logo work and branding work over the course of the last couple of weeks. Down there in the middle, I see Vice Squadron, which everybody probably has heard of here or there, where, up in the top is something nobody's probably heard of, which is the Kraken Trading Company. And Cosmonites and Atlas and SeaTac and Magellan and Defiant and Nighthawks and so on and so forth. These groups represent the actual way that we are playing the game, and we have had some fun with branding and kind of giving them cool names and fun logos, and ultimately getting them set up where they can start attracting people to join into them. Also, you'll notice that the Chaos Squadron cat has EM signatures for eye slits, which is hilarious. So this is something I said we'd come back to, but will there be a second fleet? So there's some nuance into the way that we talk about this. There is only one fleet, which is the Vanguard fleet. First Fleet is the name of the fleet division operating in Stanton and eventually in Pyro. Eventually, there will be many Vanguard fleet divisions operating throughout the many star systems we will have. So is the next one going to be called Second Fleet? Who knows? It might be called Nyx Fleet, or it might be called Vega Fleet, or whatever it happens to be. We're not going to lump ourselves in that everything it has to be First Fleet, then Second Fleet, then Third Fleet. We can call the fleets whatever we want. We'll figure that out when the time comes. But for now, First Fleet is the name of the fleet division operating inside of Stanton. So we start getting into some questions. What if I'm not in a unit? So if you're not in a unit, you'll sit in the garrison so long as you're active. If you want to join a unit, we have some helpful ways to decide which is best, and your officers will also help. So that sounds cool. How do I know which unit I want to join? So there's a couple of ways that we can do this, and we're building better tooling around it. So there will be a website that's currently under construction right now that we're about to launch. It will show you all of the First Fleet units. It'll show you what their training programs look like. It'll show you what the rosters for those units are, and so on and so forth. One difference in this new structure is that units can recruit you. So if I'm from Vice Squadron, for instance, then I know that there's a really, really great pilot that's sitting down in Moon Company. I can go talk to that guy and be like, hey, do you want to do some Vice stuff with us? And, we'll help you improve your dogfighting, and you can come fly with the Vice when you're not doing Moon stuff. That person can say, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll come do that, right? And it's no big deal because they don't have to leave Moon Company in order to do that. I don't have to leave Nighthawks in order to go be in Chaos. I could be in both, and that's no big deal. We have the forum threads right now. We also have our Discord channels right now. We're building the website stuff. You can be recruited. And then I've also built some visualizations. So these visualizations are kind of showing overlap between the groups in terms of the types of gameplay that they're interested in. Right, so at the top I can see Vice. We do fighters and rated PvP and competitive org versus org skirmishes. We do griefer hunting and we're a training focused group that does a lot of arena commander. Versus somewhere down at the bottom like Moon, we have, they focus on mechanized armor, heavy infantry, large scale group deployments. You can see that Moon and Witcher overlap with their usage of Gravlev and close quarters battle, capture, boarding, commando type gameplay. And as we move up, you can see that right in the middle, there's a whole bunch of people that overlap in close air support, dropship, and gunship play. You can see Atlas and Defiant down inside of there, as well as, Phoenix overlaps, Moon and Chaos and Witcher. They all kind of overlap into some of these things. If I'm really interested, I like small scale unit play, but I'm also, really into scouting and maybe, force recon sounds like a thing to me. I can see that down there, between Nighthawks and Witcher is an overlap thing. And it will help me understand, that maybe I should go look at both of those groups. So it kind of drives me into the place. So we're working on these visualizations that will help. So for you guys that are looking at it going, well, what the hell? It's a bunch of combat groups. We've got the same thing sitting here for our non-combat groups and for our industrial exploration and commercial and support ships, right? Same basic thing, right? I come in, I look at it and I'm interested in salvage, repair, refuel. Fleet service is definitely the place for me, right? But maybe I'm interested in hauling. Well, hauling's an interesting one because there's a lot of people that overlap in hauling. SeaTac and Kraken and Magellan and Rock Raiders, and Atlas sits right in the dead center of that. So I can see all of these groups that kind of sit out in place. And again, this isn't perfect. It doesn't have everybody. Everything's not represented here, but these, and it's also very hard to get so many concentric circles to work correctly, but I'm working on it. But the idea is to ultimately help people figure out, this is the thing that I'm interested in doing, so where do I sit? Where do I go? Which kind of brings us to the next step. Is like, well, what do I need to do to join a unit? So here's a complex example, right? I want to be an initiate for this example first fleet unit that I'm looking here. And I can see that, well, I need to do basic nav 2, basic recon, ground evasion, universal self-defense, advanced medical training 1. So I need to get a whole bunch of stuff checked off in order for me to be eligible to get into the initiate level for this thing. But I can also see that I need 20 kills in Star Marine in a single game. So I know, what things I have to do. And so ultimately this would then be organized into an academy like I have in Vice. So in Vice, you can see as a trainee exactly which things you have to do in order to become a trainee. What box do you have to check to reach the trainee status? And then you move to apprentice and you kind of work your way up. Okay. So this is a complex example. So let's talk about a less complex one, right? So my new Vanguardian here is coming and saying, hi, what do I need to do to join Cosmonites, right? Cosmonites gives us a simple answer, and we move on with our life, and we're all happy, right? It's simple, it's straight to the point, it's super easy, and it's Cosmonites is, there's not a lot to it. You just go in there and you go, collect loot and have a hell of a good time. There will be something for everyone, right? There's going to be gameplay for everybody. We're going to make sure that we have everything taken care of. So what does a first fleet deployment look like? We have, and so here's a couple of examples, right? On the left, I've got the group that we sent out for Conquest Microtech. Hang on, everybody. I have a crying little one in the background. Give me 1 second here. All right, sorry about that, everybody. So you can see we've got this Conquest Microtech fleet here. Lots of combat elements. We had Witcher there, and Defiant, and Vice, and Nighthawks, and Unity, and Chaos, and Atlas, and Metal Squadron. TACCOM was there leading everybody. TACCOM is our, battle command telemetry group that helps us coordinate. So you can kind of see all these different aspects that came together. It's a huge event, lots of moving parts and pieces. And then on the right over here, I've got something more commercial focused, right? So I'm just calling it the Dumpster Divers event. Fleet Services is leading a large flotilla of salvagers that are going out to ultimately salvage wrecks. I've got Atlas Squadrons going to come along. They're going to transport salvage, material back and sell it. Vice Squadron's going to be there to both help protect, provide security for the group, as well as potentially create more salvage so that they can go get it. SeaTac is out there. They're going to be going and locating new hulls, potentially boarding them, taking care of any people that might be on board. And Unity's out there. They're going to make sure that if we lose the ship and we need to extract somebody out of a soft death, that we can do that safely. So it kind of brings us this next thing. We've heard this a lot of feedback as we've kind of taken this deck through our officers and wing leadership. People are a little bit worried that it seems like it's all about PvP. And this is an interesting one because it's not all about PvP, but it's not all about PvE either. At the end of the day, Star Citizen is about both. As an example, if we were to go back up and we were to look at this Conquest Microtech event, while we have Org versus Org fleet battles, the actual fighting part is actually a pretty small part of the experience. It takes the cooperation of the entire organization across all gameplay loops to compete in these battles. And the preparation for the last few battles literally resulted in hundreds and hundreds of hours of battle planning, strategy testing, scouting, surveying, fundraising, people going out and mining, doing whatever they can to get their whole money, grab money for us, so we can fund buying ships that we need in order to, do the strategies we want to play with. Stockpiling specialist equipments like railguns and FS9s and so on and so forth. And what's cool about it is that the battle is really just like a focusing point for the org that gives everybody a reason to go do the things that they know and love, right? That gives us a reason to go play and do stuff together. So even though I'm looking at, I could see all the fleet elements that actually showed up in this fleet detachment that went for Conquest Microtech on the left, what's not shown here is that it really took something like the group on the right to go get the money that we needed in order to support the thing that's on the left, right? Everything goes hand in hand, PvE focus and PvP focus. So we're looking at small and large-scale commercial events as well. So on the right, something like a relaxed trading night. Kraken Trading Company's running a couple of Caterpillars, and they got a couple of Vice guys that are flying along with them, providing security, scouting, jump points, and trade routes, and so on and so forth. Real simple, real straightforward, just chilling and having a good time. Versus on the left, we have something very much more involved. This is a trading event, right? And Ninetales Blockade. We're going to run, I've tried to spell exclusion right twice, and I have gotten it wrong now both times. I apologize. But what we would do for this Ninetales Blockade exclusion is we would send a security force into the blockaded station, and we would declare an exclusion zone to the rest of the server. Let everybody know that if you come in, then you will be destroyed, and that whole area is on lockdown. And then we would make sure that our own commercial effort has unfettered access to the trade terminal. So our own ships are going to be flying in, they're going to be selling all of their goods, and they're going to have to compete for terminal time. This allows us to then exploit that money-making opportunity and get as much as we possibly can out of it and control it. And it's interesting because CIG keeps making events with a commercial gain and a PvP element, right? Jumptown 2.0, the Ninetales Blockade, and there's more and more. Any event that they make, no matter how much they say it's about PvE, it always ends up having that PvP element to it anyway, right? So it's always happening. So the common theme here is that the org who controls the resources is the org that gets paid. So if we want to get paid, we have to compete for it. We spent the last year building one of the strongest competitive organizations in the entire game, but we did it in a different way. We leveraged our strengths first. Vanguard stands apart because of our commercial, industrial, and exploration focus. We run regular weekly events focused on trading, exploring, mining, and soon salvaging. We're also organizing large-scale events for the future and with a focus on org-level cooperation and play for the same areas like salvage, mining, trading, exploration, and just chilling, hanging out, and having a good time. We also have one of the finest support organizations in the game. Our transport, logistics, scouting, and meta groups are incredibly professional and capable. And this truly sets us apart from a lot of the other organizations that are interested in competing. We are strong here, just like we're strong in our industrial component as well. And our fighting force is growing stronger every single day. Vice, Phoenix, Moon, Witcher, Chaos, and Defiant. Each of these groups are improving with regular practice and learning to work together as a larger combat force. Our ability to compete goes up every single day. And together we are stronger than we are alone, right? And I realized that like 10 minutes before this conversation that I would have rather drawn this in a circle. But what I could see here is that exploration, industrial, and commercial supports my fleet services and support groups, which in turn support my naval fighter and infantry combat groups, which in turn support my exploration, industrial, and commercial groups. This is a circle that goes round and round and round. And Vanguard sits squarely in the middle of all of it because we have all of these things together. And after all, we are an org. What we do, we're here to play together as one group that ultimately achieves gigantic things together that we can only do as an organization. So what else is happening this year? So we've got some goals. We're going to really quintuple down on the medal, ribbon, badge, and kudos system. We want to give awards based on participation in events that persist on member profiles and really focus on it during promotion ceremonies. We've got some of these tooling that we released last year that we haven't really leveraged a ton.
Sorry, you're getting a bit muffled again.
How about now?
Go in and out of muffling. Oh, that's a lot better. Yeah, try to keep the mic.
Cool, yeah. I think my mic is slowly falling down. So we're going to give awards based on participation. We're also our wing commanders are going to make sure that Rank progression is recognizing the people who really excel at community management, as well as the people who are doing an excellent job as instructors in the academy, and the people that are doing an excellent job in gameplay, game commanders, and game players. So they're going to recognize all of these people, and we're going to make sure that we are growing or giving them growth opportunities equally. We're going to do some other simple things to kind of go back up to the thing above, right? When you earn a rank, you get a rank badge. Even if you degrade due to inactivity, that badge always remains clearly marking your prior achievements. We've got people in this organization that are running around as talent adepts that are former wing commanders, and I don't think anybody knows that, but they degraded themselves naturally. They did a good, they said that I can't do this job anymore, and so they stepped themselves down and maybe went away for real life stuff, and then they came back and they play with us all the time now, but they're no longer wing commanders, and that's awesome. So what happens next? As I said before, we're rolling out some new tooling to help you track and participate in First Fleet units. Your wing officers will help any of you who are not already in a unit find your way to the right place. Some new units will continue to be spun up in the coming weeks as we fill out some game loops, and we'll keep scheduling more events and playing together as an organization. So what's the TLDR? Just going back through everything. Wings focus on academy training. First Fleet houses operational units. Member wing affiliation is unchanged. You'll still be red, green, blue, purple, whatever. You're going to focus on recognizing members with commendations, and we're going to celebrate member participation, whether it's org events, training instructors, community managers, etc., during our ceremonies. Is it going to be perfect now? The answer is no. We don't anticipate this solves every problem we have as an organization, but we do think it makes things a lot better. It will also very likely create entirely new problems, and we'll move forward. We're going to continue to evolve, and we'll see where the wind blows us. So from Space Harvest, Mason Stonewall, myself, Esden, and Quantum Physicists, we just want to say thank you to every single person in this organization. You are all integral parts to what we have achieved and what we will achieve in Vanguard. With your help, we will unite the wings through First Fleet and the Academy to become one Vanguard. Together we soar. That's the end of that part. So I'm going to take a quick moment to kind of just show you guys a couple of other things here. I want to go back and I want to just show you some of the tooling that's happening on the site.
I'm going to be making live today, Gooch, because we're showing off.
Cool. So Ed, do you want to walk through this part?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'll stop my share. You do this.
Why don't you drive? And okay, fine.
Oh, okay. Hang on. I will restart my share. 1 second.
So as Gooch is showing you, we've been meaning to do this for a while. We finally have units tracked on the website. So there'll be a button in the nav bar, but right now it's profile.vngd.net/units. And it's a simple way for people to be able to track who is in what units are available, find out how to sign up for them, etc. So you can click in on any of these units, and if you're a member of it, you'll see your name listed. If you're interested in joining it, you can sign up and join. Here, Gooch has gone on in. Because Gooch is actually the unit commander, he has a lot of tools, so he can modify where folks are level-wise. He can go through and set himself up. Any additional executive officers. He can even just directly add a member. So if someone is joining from another org, but they're being vetted by your unit as like, hey, this person really knows what they're doing, this would be a great fit. We can have methods to bring them in before they, finish at their academy stuff, although they're still going to be expected to go through that. In the top right corner, Gooch, you're not a member of Witcher, are you? Great. We'll use Witcher as an example here. So in the top right corner of any unit screen, if you're interested in joining, it'll give you instructions on how to sign up. For many of these, it's just a button that as long as you're a Talent Hoplet or higher, you'll click to sign up. You can see that for Witcher, they have an academy set up. And so it's instructing Gooch that if he would like to become part of Witcher as a pledge, he has to enroll in Witcher Squadron Initiate Academy. He can click on through, and just like every other academy site into that. Once again, I believe he has some administrative control, so it might look a little different than what you see, but there it is right there. He clicked that enroll button, sign on in, it'll automatically put him on there, and it will even give him the Witcher role. Currently, we have all the First Fleet Discords open, but we're going to be changing that in a little bit just to try and help reduce channel clutter, where if you're a Talent Hoplite and you join a unit, you'll have access to those channels and only those channels. If you're a Talent Adept or higher and you join any unit, you'll have access to all of them. But if you're not a member of a unit, they'll just kind of disappear. This is both good if you just don't want to see them because you're playing, as one of our super casual members in the garrison, or, if we have folks that are going inactive for a long period of time to prevent us from having to worry too much about ComSec. And that's really all there is to these unit pages. I'll be putting in some additional tooling soon. So for example, I expect within the next day or two that on your profile pages, if you're in a unit, it will show you those units as well as what your current level in them is. And then of course, we'll have some good breakdowns for people in command levels to be able to see what our unit breakdowns are, what our activity looks like across units, just like we have for wings already.
All right. Alexi, did you want to say anything general about the fleet today, or maybe talk about any of the events we've got coming up in the near future?
Yeah. So we've got several different events coming up. In terms of large-scale PvP, we've got the next series of the Battle of Stanton. So the next in the series of that is the 4th of March, I think next weekend is that one. So that's the one coming up. So last time we were facing off against 2 separate teams of 2 other orgs. But we were so formidable that now the 4 orgs are joining up, and it'll be Vanguard versus those 4 orgs, 40 versus 40. So that's them. And then we've also been speaking to several other orgs, Skunkworks, and also Nova Intergalactic. Nova is probably the more serious ones in terms of the planning phases. So probably on the 18th of next month, we're going to have a 54 versus 54 with Nova Intergalactic. So we're in the early stages of the planning of what that event will look like, but we've got that one coming also. In terms of non-PvP, this is really open. People can come and suggest stuff. We're really up for it. In terms of doing, it can be a competitive mining one with another org, or it can be also Nova Intergalactic. Actually, one of the guys I was speaking to, they do a lot of exploration and science. So it could be a collaborative one that we could do with them. So if Initiative's got any ideas or so forth, we've got contacts with them now. They're really excited about doing these large scale ops with us in terms of military ones, but also they've discussed alternative ops. So it could be a collaborative thing of going and surveying the Orion belts or something like that. So there's a huge variety of different types of stuff we can do. So those that are interested in different avenues, definitely reach out to Fleet Command, and we can try and organize that with different orgs, or even just getting the fleet out for ourselves to do going and taking down the Idris and doing salvage and stuff like that. We can do it internally, or we can do it externally.
Yeah, and I think right now we don't have anything scheduled in terms of like kind of large scale commercial things, primarily because we're waiting for 318 to drop. There's no reason to do any mass scale events in the PU at this point, in that regard. But I know that last weekend we had a pretty large scale salvaging event that was Fleet Services put on, that was in the PTU. We expect we'll probably have, I don't know, maybe we'll have PTU by next week. Maybe it's another week after that. We'll see. But once we do have the 318 patch rolls to live, then we'll really start loading the calendar up with these commercial events as well, because we're going to need to start generating credits and whatnot. So there's lots of stuff coming. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to make little changes here and whatnot. You guys are going to see some changes, within the org charts and, how the org chart on the site looks and how the roster on the site looks. Because we're not going to have these groups within the wings anymore, and they'll be actually represented in the first fleet units. Then, there will be some shift in terms of how, like what your chain of command and reporting structure looks like, and so on and so forth. Each of the wings has their own, approach to how they're going to roll this out. You can look to your officers, to help kind of understand specifics about each of your groups. And I'm sure that there's going to be a couple of hiccups here, something we haven't thought about, something that might be a problem. Please provide that feedback. You can come talk to, you come talk to VLC. You can talk to your commanders. You can talk to Fleet Command. Unit commanders inside of First Fleet. There's a lot of people that are here and able to help kind of guide you and show you what your next steps look like.
All right. Hey, Gooch, we have a couple questions coming in the Town Hall chat, not the Town Hall chat, but the chat attached to this Town Hall. So let's start going through some of those. I see that H2O, thank you. You've already been answering a few of those. But let's go through some of those. So first off, someone asked if they'll have access to this presentation later. I believe we can get that to folks.
Alacron is recording right now. So once he's got it done, we'll get it loaded someplace, and then we'll provide a link out so people can go back and watch it.
Next up here, I'm looking for ones that H2 hasn't answered. If you have new questions, please type them in and we'll get to them as we go. What about current certifications for other wing academies? I assume new ones may came up for First Fleet, but what about the wing certifications? Are those still available for everyone to complete? I wanted to answer this one because certifications, at least in the short term, will still live under wings, which are primarily our training bodies. We do need to get better as a whole about looking at existing certs and new certs as a feedback loop. The intent was always that certs, just like everything in this game, are constantly evolving. Certs should be derived from our best practice of how to do things in game. We then build out those certifications for how to do part of that, not necessarily all, because certs are at different levels. And then we use those certifications. And when we see that certifications are no longer reflecting that best action in game, it's time to go back and rewrite that best practice, rewrite those certifications. So all extant certs that are still that still make sense for the game, we'll still be able to run them. Those will still be available. We have a couple certs, for example, that are in need of update, and we're not currently running those. But as we get those updated, they'll be back again. And as we have new certs come online, we'll take care of those and get those written up with the appropriate stakeholders. Once again, if you're interested in writing up a cert, if you really care deeply about an area of the game that we don't cover, just reach out to the wing or wings that you think represent that gameplay the most, and we'll make sure we get you queued up.
I just wanted to add something to that before you move on. So with the certifications also, these write something, get something drafted, you can have a review of it with other people within your wings, and then we need to get out and we need to test these things, because sometimes we think a certain method will work, and the whole point of doing these sorts of large scale events is to test our theories and concepts against other orbs in a dynamic environment. And sometimes they work as we plan, and a lot of the time they don't, that we have to adjust and so forth. So there needs to be a feedback, and this is what we're going to be working on with the First Fleet Command channel, that you relay the information to your unit commanders. Your units will then relay it in that channel, and there will be a feedback between the units and the wings in terms of what's actually working to feed into the academies the latest information from the field. And this is going to be backwards and forwards, because a certain certification may be used by several different units, and then they may take it and use it in their own purpose. For instance, this, Nighthawks uses an Eclipse, but then Phoenix Squad also uses an Eclipse, but they might have it in different ways and different manners to use it to achieve their objectives. One's primarily scouting, one's primarily attack. So then the certification may be more general, and then the units go into more specifics and take it from there. So this is the things that we're going to have to work through and discuss as part of the leadership, and get this feedback to get the certifications as relevant as possible and as fit as for purpose as possible.
So guys, can we hold the chatter in the town hall chat that's not specific to questions, because I think we're going to lose questions in this flow here if you guys are posting gifs and like joking around and stuff. So
yeah, please keep it on topic so we can
just
follow things.
ask questions and that's it. You can emote on the questions, whatever, if you want.
I do see another good one from Galasaur. How will conflicts be handled in First Fleet groups? Example, helmsman for more than one First Fleet ship, and both get deployed at the same time.
So I could take that one. So this is actually a pretty simple one. The answer is that if you're a unit commander and you have somebody that you've elevated to helmsman, you should also be aware if that helmsman is providing the same role on another ship. And when it comes time for you to then show up at an event, we are very, very careful about our roster planning. So if you've got some, like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, is this person showing up in this group or this group? And every single name goes onto the ship, right? So there's no, let me go find an example here. Right. So every single ship is very, very clear who exactly is going to be doing whatever thing it is that they're going to do. And at the end of the day, if you come up with somebody that I need a Defiant and I need an Atlas, and there's a helmsman for both of those, then the member that's the helmsman in those cases is going to need to talk to his unit commanders and say, I'm going to be flying with Defiant today. I'm not going to be flying with Atlas, or vice versa, right? And it's up to that person who has that role to then communicate that back to their commanders, so we don't end up with an overlap. But otherwise, you're free to do whatever you want. There was another one in here about rank progression that I think is kind of an important question. So Barabas said, our existing claw and lance structures are being dissolved. How will rank progression work? Is it being left to the individual First Fleet squadrons to decide, or will there still be a universal rank structure? H2O responded to this. The rank structure stays the same as it is today. However, the groups within the wings, right? So the rings, groups, and divisions, those are going away. So you're no longer going to be the star captain of Star Merchants, right? Or the squad chief of VTAC. You might be a squad chief and you might be in Moon Company, but those actually aren't going to go hand in hand with each other, right? Because the rank that you have within a given First Fleet group is going to correspond with how you perform within that given First Fleet group. So if you take the Vice example, Alexei is, I'm going to go find it here. All right, I don't even need to go back into it. So in the Vice example, Alexei is a Vice rookie, right? Esden is a Vice trainee. Esden and Alexei are two of the highest ranked people in this entire organization. But for the purposes of Vice, I don't care, right? It doesn't matter what their rank is, because they have to step through the Vice training program and work their way up. And that's just how it is. And that's how it should be in this organization, right? Just because you have a number of stars or bars next to your name doesn't automatically mean that you should be in command of a thing. And so, we're just like, if I join Kraken Trading Company, which I absolutely am going to be doing, I'm going to be like a bottom ranked Kraken person, and whatever that bottom rank for them is. And until I prove myself as a rank 2, like an L2 Kraken guy, then I will stay in L1 and I will work my way up through those groups. But I'm not going to, because I'm a Vice Marshal in Vanguard, does not mean that I have some inherent knowledge about trading in this game. And Alexei being a soon-to-be 3-star commander does not also mean that he has some inherent understanding of being a fighter fighter pilot. So these groups will be your rank within a given First Fleet group. And I shouldn't use the word rank. We're using the term level. The level you have achieved within your given First Fleet group is going to be specific to that First Fleet group, and it'll be indicative of like where you are within that group. So you might be. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to interject here, I want us to start thinking about, and I've kind of emphasized this for a while, that there's different types of roles that previously we kind of lumped all under our rank system, which isn't really appropriate, because there are people that do a lot of very good administrative work for this organization that is very critical and important, and there are people that do huge amounts of gameplay, in-game work, specializing on gameplay and leadership within those. And those two skill sets are very different. So, just like Gooch was saying, Gooch happens to be one of the people that do both. He is in charge of Vice. He is also one of our VLC members. I am scattered throughout a couple of units. I'm not taking active leadership in the units because I'm not as versed in the gameplay currently, but I'm still a VLC member. I'm still making a lot of decisions for helping direct the org. Same is true across a lot of the folks that are leading our units. There are various captains in there, et cetera. They are making decisions that affect their units, making sure they're playing to the best of capability, making sure they know how to play to the best of their ability. And of course, The performance of folks within those units is something that they should be feeding back in to those people's reports in their wings, because someone that's doing exceptional work in a unit that is down at a talent adept level or a talent hotpoint level, that's absolutely something that should be factored into promotion, just as it was sort of informally before. And so nothing has changed. What we're doing now is we're having a structure that actually reflects how we work in game a little more accurately, rather than trying to bucket it all under this kind of single structure.
There's another question here, if again from Barabas. I think it's just a follow-up question to this, right? Like, so let's say I'm a lance master in security. If the security wing is an academy thing, the security wing is still an affiliation, right? You're still a red shirt, a blue shirt, a green shirt, and so on and so forth. And your rank is still something that is granted to you within the security ring. But there are many paths that can kind of lead somebody through something, and so it's entirely possible that like you this kind of ties in something that Aluminum Falcon had asked about cross training. You might be in 3 First Fleet groups, and one of them might be Kraken, one of them might be Rock Raiders, and the other one might be Witcher, right? And you might be so that means you're doing trading, you're doing mining, and you're doing FPS combat. And but you might be doing all 3 of those things, and you might be from initiative, right? That's entirely possible in this structure. Initiative will still be responsible for making sure that you're moving through the ranks accordingly based on what it is that you're doing. So if you're stepping into a position where you are
Gooch, I think we lost you.
Yeah, I had to yell at my kids for
no worries.
So if you're doing a lot of these different things, but you're in initiative because right now you're not doing, maybe you're not part of the Magellan group, but you're part of the Nighthawks group or whatever.
I think I can simplify this a little bit further too. If you see someone that is a lance master in this org, it's going to mean one of several things. Either they are in a unit and actively leading large numbers of folks, such that we would expect to be a lance command, effectively in at least one unit. Or alternatively, that they are administratively leading a large number of people, as in actively doing high-level work as an instructor, where they're coordinating big efforts in that status. Perhaps both, but the rank kind of identities still align with what you're doing. So if you're a lance master in security, it means you've been recognized by security wing for high levels of contribution in leadership, either in game or administratively or both. And they have recognized that with that rank. If you're no longer doing either of those things, they might step you back down to Talent Adept. Let's say you're on a 6-month break, or you just want to play casually for a while. That's absolutely fine. We want to make sure that ranks reflect actual activity, and we want to also remove this association that people have with ranks as only being upward. Rank's just a job, and it's a job that signifies your current level of commitment and contribution that you're able to make to the org, or willing to make to the org.
All right, so Swordfish asks, what happens to Ace? Ace is so this is, H2O said the same thing here. It's collapsing, right? Ace is a group. It collapses into security. There will be certifications that were kind of Ace-related things, like BCFM, for instance. That'll continue to be taught within the Security Academy. But the gameplay aspect of what Ace was doing was already happening inside of Vice and now the Phoenix Squadron, right? So light fighters and fighter support ships. So we were already doing that in Vice Squadron, and we're just going to continue doing it in Vice Squadron. I think if you were to go look at the roster for these groups, I think you would probably find that 98% of the people in Ace were actually already part of Vice Squadron anyway. Some of them might not choose Vice Squadron. Maybe they choose Chaos Squadron because Chaos, is a little bit more focused. It's less about hardcore training and more about finding ways to go get in a fighter and blow something up, right? So there's different groups for different different places for different folks that want to go and play things a little bit differently, and that's kind of what we're going for here. Right, but that old Ace group that's there today or was there yesterday will no longer be there tomorrow. And that goes for all of the groups across all of the wings, right? They're all now being shifted into this new structure. There are 17 groups or 17 First Fleet units currently. There used to be, in the original structure when we rolled this stuff out, there were 54 groups within all of the different groups within the wing divisions of the wings. We're breaking that down to 17 First Fleet units. There may be a few more by the time we're done. And over time, as new gameplay loops come available, then there will be more. Then we'll keep growing as necessary to make sure we have all this gameplay covered.
We have lots more questions coming in. Kind of wrapping things up, I see a couple things that have come up. Of Kilted's questions as follow-up. Kilted says, why not place first fleet units within their related wings? Keep the same interplay rules. I think ultimately this comes down to we had
this one is answered right
squadrons.
Here. Yeah, it's answered right here. Swordfish, it's very clear. Fleet units can draw from the entire member base. Vice Squadron is not made up of ace pilots within the security division. Vice Squadron, especially in its original format, most of the people who were out there in Vice playing with me on a day-to-day basis actually came from Industries and Initiative and Frontier, right? And the entire point is that fleet units can draw from the entire member base with no concern about which wing you were from. So that's why this is why it makes sense for these things to move into place. You should also pay attention to the deck more. Slide 15.
Continuing on here, Redcat notices that all the squad units at First Frontier are green. There's also a lot of orange, for example, in Industries, and a lot of red in the security ones. Is that a theme that will be continued, or is that?
Let's call this what it is. Colors exist, and we are going to use them, right? And it's okay. Right? It's okay for us to still have some colors. You'll see that Unity has literally all of the colors from all of the wings, but we've also got Moon and Chaos down there, and they don't have colors to them, although I need to update the Chaos one with it's got some, those EM signatures are red. And so, the idea was here is to come up with some fun branding for these things. And, in some cases we tried to kind of hold over that wing structure for things. But like Phoenix is certainly not an Industries group, but that is a fairly orangish looking bird, right? So it just is what it is because we were choosing colors and they look nice. Vice Squadron is in command yellow, but that doesn't mean that you have to be in command wing in order to be there.
So I do want to also revisit because I think Kilted said the meat of the question was the second part, i.e. talking about the progression within the unit, actual chain of command in the wing. So that's the part of the problem, right? Is that we're going to have people that, there are some gameplay elements that just are not in the game right now. Like if you're really interested eventually in doing homesteading, for example, it doesn't exist. But let's say you're also super interested in, anything that these current groups are currently covering, whether that's, fighter pilot combat or ground combat, or you want to be, you're like, hey, I'm going to jump into the mining for now or into trade right now. You can still advance that and show contribution, and that might not necessarily be aligned with the wing that you're part of. We'll still be able to see that advancement. That's one of the reasons why having them within the wings, I think, would have just contributed to additional confusion. Also, going back to what Gooch was saying about the number of squadrons we had, in our full spec org structure that was following the rule of three, that's way back there, 54 squadrons. We don't see that much coverage right now. What we identified right now clearly is 17. I do see other folks, for example, talking about like, hey, can we spin up a unit that does X, Y, or Z? And it's like, well, absolutely, if there's enough divergence. I want to point you to Phoenix, which is one of our newer units. Phoenix came out of a recognition that some of the requisitions required for kind of support craft that focus very specifically on specialized combat, such as bombing or EMP or interdiction, have very different skill set requirements and deployment needs than something like Vice or something like Witcher or Chaos, etc. And so there's a lot of overlap. I see Gooch has already brought up his slide. There's a lot of overlap, but the overlap needs to be clear enough where it's like, this is not a one-to-one. It is this is a very specific set of focuses that we're doing in a certain style of skill training. So if, for example, you want to talk about a group that's focused on like smaller scale gunships, and we can find out and we can look at it and be like, hey, are they different enough from Defiant? Then possibly. The Defiant is not really a hammerhead group anymore. They are large multi-crew combat ships, which does cover things like the Deemer and the M2 as well. Maybe you want to do a gunship unit that focuses on things like Connie's.
Let me just interject something here. So Ghost had asked a question a few minutes ago about whether or not Defiant is converted into a squadron. So the answer is yes. The answer is that Defiant is technically it's not. We've stepped away from the idea that these are units or that these are ships. So Defiant is not a ship. Defiant is a unit, and that unit, as we have actually utilized it in our events, is not a ship, right? This is the Defiant squadron running two multi-crew, bomber and multi-rule combat ships, right? That was Defiant that ran that. Just like in this earlier version here, Defiant ran as a squadron, and it ran both a Hammerhead and a Constellation, right? And so this was something that we talked about in the town hall in January, that these first fleet units, they aren't locked into being a given ship at a given time. They can bring the right equipment to get the job done. And so there's further examples of this all through, our various different elements and whatnot, right? Here's the Unity that's running is a forward operating base and carrier for Vice Squadron in this format, where in the coming battle, we also have the Unity that's here, but in this case, they're going to be flying, it'll be a Carrack, and they will actually be operating as a forward operating base for the Marine group, right? So there is nobody's being locked into a given piece of thing. They have specializations. So Defiant is going to be the squadron that is specializing in multi-crew gunship, or multi-crew gunship, naval combat ships, and so on and so forth.
Perfect. All right, moving through a couple questions. So rapid fire ones. What is TACCOM? That is our tactical command. They work both inside and outside the game, especially outside the game, to provide us with rich details about what's going on in combat. They also train up to eventually be able to assist in actual comms and unit leadership. If you're interested in that kind of gameplay, look at TACCOM. They're doing some really amazing stuff that has given us huge amounts of information for our events. Moving down further, for the Raptor ranks, how will progression be affected with the move towards First Fleet? Nidhogg, I'm not going to lie to you and say that we have an answer right now. Raptors have always been kind of a very interesting position where we want to be able to recognize people's ability and then give them a rank for that. We're not changing anything right now, so in the short term, it would still be advanced based on your proficiency in gameplay as someone that's not interested in leadership, and we can always reevaluate in the future. I think that'll be a combination of both your unit performance as well as your skill performance and certs for your wing. But it's always been a very interesting role. Continuing further here. Flaro has a question, another question in relation to this. Will we have to scout out for more members of Vanguard / units to handle more star systems when they come online? I think that's kind of a two-front thing, right? Which is that obviously this org scales very well. We're growing rapidly all the time. But we're not going to, just go on a recruiting free with lower standards just because there's more space to cover. We will obviously have to act dynamically based on our active numbers, the amount of concurrency we can have. There's lots of different forms our org activity can take place in an imagined full verse, whether that's that we're clustered around one primary system and kind of a little bit nomadic, or if we have a huge number of people and transport is simple, that we have lots of hubs all over the verse with different people kind of dedicated to those areas and able to transfer in and out as needed.
And I think going back to this Raptor conversation, I see that Schlag had posted a recommendation about, more granularity. To me, and this is something that will evolve over the course of the year. I think we'll dial in on this a little bit and figure out exactly what it means. But we put a lot of pressure on the rank system to be the answer for a lot of things over the years, and we're trying to step away from that. We're trying to move away from a world where rank is the only thing that matters. So we're pushing forward the commendation system that's going to show us, whether a person has been participating in these fleet events and what type of fleet events have they been going to. Have they been decorated for their contributions and been given medals and badges and so on and so forth. And we're also looking at, we're trying to make that more important and more something that matters to everybody, and taking, drawing the attention away from only being rank focused. And so the same goes with First Fleet units. Within a First Fleet unit, you can grow, right? So at Vice, we have people who have pledged versus people who have achieved trainee status, versus people who have gone to rookie status and pilot status and keg status. And if I'm really interested in knowing what somebody is capable of, the fact that they're a security Raptor actually tells me very little about that person, right? I don't know when was the last time they played. I don't know, what's going on. As an example, we actually had an old security Raptor show up to an event for Conquest Microtech, and he came into the game. He was super excited to come play in this stuff, but he hadn't been in the game for 4 years. And imagine the amount of change that has happened over the course of the last 4 years, respawning and setting your
inventory,
like everything was different. It's a completely different game, and he didn't know what he was doing. And so that it tells me very little whether somebody is a Raptor or not. But what tells me a lot is whether or not somebody is an L3 in Vice Squadron. If you are a full-on Vice pilot, I have a very strong idea about where your capabilities lie. I know that if you have made, Witcher status in Witcher, or if Moon, like if you're in Moon Squadron Moon Company, and you're working your way through their program, like I have an expectation of what you have learned based on that group that you're inside of and where you're, what you've, achieved. And it's important that all of these, First Fleet units kind of start building out those programs so that people have that ability to grow. But at the end of the day, like for me, I don't necessarily care about what your Raptor rank is in security, but I do care whether or not you can provide, meet the mission objective for scouting mission that I'm about to send you on. Right? That's the thing that's important, is whether or not you're capable of achieving the level of gameplay. So I think as time goes on, we'll continue to start to look at more, and the story of every single person is far more about, it's not just their rank, it's their rank plus their levels within the First Fleet groups that they're associated, or units that they're associated with, as well as the commendations and whatnot that they have achieved. And as far, Ghost, just like you said, getting commendations. We can't always just play for the lowest common denominator, right? Some people can't make it to events. And I personally struggle with being able to be at weekend events because I have skiing and soccer and a family. I'm much more able to play during the week because I have a job that allows me to kind of multitask. And so there's going to be things that I personally can't do. But just because I can't do it doesn't mean that somebody else can't do it, or that somebody else couldn't have been there. But this is why we're looking at multiple things, in terms of people's contributions, right? We want to see, maybe somebody is really active at training. Somebody is very active in helping, develop our talents into, helping guide them through the organization. Or maybe, they play late at night and, their way of, playing is to be high on the battle royale leaderboards or whatever it is, right? Like those are the things that we're looking for. And the rank itself has never been a good way for us to recognize all of those things and for people to see it alone. We need to spread it out so we have other markers for us to look at. Prox says, during onboarding and acclimating a new person to the org, will their information, yada, 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 so yes, this is built into the boot system, right? This is where the boot program will help, point people in the right direction. Places where we aren't informing people well enough, they will be informed of that stuff. We'll grow those groups, right? And that's the entire idea. We're trying to get people, going into the org, getting that orientation, saying, here's how we work, this is what we do, this is what to expect, this is where you'll go from here to here to here, and lay that all out for them. And no, Ghost, that's entirely the point, right? Is that so Ghost is asking if, he's not able to attend the events because of the way that his job works or whatever, he's got a family, right? Then is he going to still be measured? And the answer is that's the point of us making sure that we're looking at all of these things, because we don't want to lose people that maybe can't show up to events but contribute in other ways, right? There can't be any one marker for success, because there are many different ways in which people contribute to the organization. And so we'll be able to, the wing commanders' jobs, who will continue to be in charge of that rank progression, and it'll be up to them to do that. But the unit commanders, it'll be up to them to make sure that they're ensuring that the people who are doing a good job within their unit are being recognized and growing through their levels, within their unit. And when it comes to recognition for things, we're going to have to make sure that there's stuff that recognizes people who participate in events, but also people who have gone out of their way and above and beyond to build, a tooling program and, that allows us to do some special thing, or people who have done a special amount of onboarding and whatever it happens to be, right? Because there's different focuses, and we need to make sure that we're recognizing all of them.
Gooch, sorry if you felt abandoned there. I was an example of real life. I had my ears on, but I had to run around and help my wife with something. I am back now. Just wanted to add on to that, seeing the last things about training as activity, et cetera. A great example is like the way that Vice works, for example. advancement within Vice is not determined by performance in events. Obviously, if someone does a great job in an event, that's a great thing to get a commendation for it, but it's determined by training and testing. So you can advance with units even if you're not able to be in those events. Obviously, the large scale org events that we've been doing with First Fleet, those are things where scheduling is incredibly tricky. We're working with multiple orgs, most of whom are, they're setting their time schedules for us, and we have to do them when we have to do them. But our trainings are happening all the time. And if you are, part of a unit where any of your active times are not present, talk to them. Tell them you need a different time zone. Tell them you want to participate in advance, and they'll find ways to help that out. It all goes back to what Gooch was saying. There are more than one way to advance and show contributions. There are plenty of ways to contribute to this org. We'll make sure we recognize all of them.
And I'm going to add one last thing to this because it's actually super. Back, so there is a fundamental flaw in this view that I'm looking at right now. The only thing this is telling me is what the actual attendance was during the event. It does not show me all of the people who contributed money, the people who participated in battle planning, and the people who helped us work on comms, tooling, the people who might have had training events that helped build up that didn't even actually get to show up to this event, but they actually hosted training events to help us figure out whether our tactics were going to be good tactics for the actual event that when it came down. This doesn't show any of that, right? And so this is not the whole picture. So the participation, for whatever happened around this event, this doesn't show me everything. And so it's up to Alexi and, the unit commanders and everybody to see those things and to go, yeah, you know what, Ghost wasn't at this one, but he also ran 3 trainings focused on figuring out how to, how best to transfer or, run that convoy, and at what point was it best to actually launch the torpedoes from a convoy ballista, right? So Ghost might have been heavily involved in the preparation for it, but actually didn't show up to the event. And that has to be captured and recognized. And so these are the things that it's going to be on us to make sure that we're seeing those contributions. And, it's going to fall to our unit commanders and our fleet commanders and our wing commanders to be watching out for that stuff and making sure that those people are being noticed for their contributions and the things that they're doing.
Want to move on to 2 other questions. Really fast, H2O has answered some of these, but I want to give verbal confirmation. Is there going to be more fluidity in certifying? For example, if someone plays late and can't make it to normal hour trainings that are scheduled, could someone who plays them that is higher level assess them and provide the cert based on their ability? So where we do have some certs that are already based on, they have an observational component to them. I've already asked folks to go through and figure out if your cert can be observational, find ways to metric that out. But the clear thing, Fedor, is that certifications need to be repeatable and consistent. So if people haven't had a chance to go through and identify what makes that consistent for assessment outside of an event, then unfortunately we're still limited. But we're going to try and make sure that we can figure out places to make that more feasible and doable for the events that matter in that way. Prox, I'll answer your question later during the Academy meeting, as H2O clarified. Taladro has a point, and I think there's actually an easier answer for this. One advantage of rank is that if 2 people you don't know are asking you to do conflicting things, you don't know who you can politely decline. So the cool thing is, rank doesn't matter for formal operations. Formal operations have an established chain of command. As for example, here's our Conquest Microtech chain of command. So you know who you should be answering and who's above them in chain. And basically, if you're hearing someone else who's leading a different unit tell you to do something, first off, you shouldn't even be in their same comms channel. That's a failure. But secondly, they shouldn't be doing that. They should only be ordering folks that they're in command of.
Oh, so Ferrero is asking about base building and whether the units will control those bases. Well, personally, I love the idea of base building, and when Vanguard can plant a flag on the ground, I think it's going to be a huge game changer in terms of how we operate. But I think that gameplay is a few years out. So I think once that comes close, it looks like it's going to be within at least 12 months, let's say. Then we can really start planning on it. Because if I gave you answers now, it would just be quite diverged until we know the actual mechanics.
I would also hazard, Alexi, that it would be less of this unit controls this base and more of this detachment composed of representatives. Yeah. Because can you imagine? Gosh, it would be really, really shitty if we tell a bunch of fighter pilots you're in charge of this base. They're like, cool. Do we have to get out of our ships? Yeah, you have to go down and push the buttons. what do we do here? No, you need to have a whole bunch of different people supporting those bases, both defensively and operationally, in order to make them work properly.
And mining to get the resources to build the bases, it's a huge activity.
We're gonna put the traders in charge of one base and make them mine. Now that's exactly what the system avoids. That's why it's going to be useful. Flair asks, I doubt this will ever happen. Would it ask if a new unit has a falling out, i.e. no one wants to be a part of it, no one gets along, everyone leaves, will that unit take off offline, or will that unit be filled with new members? I mean, I think that's if a unit's not being used.
Let me take this one real quick. So the answer is Fleet Command will decide. Fleet Command will look at the unit. They'll see, is there something, that we need here? Do we need to shake this up because it's just clearly not working? Or do we just kill it? And the answer is going to be, it'll be up to Fleet Command. They may kill it. They may keep it and put new leadership in place. They may shift its purview around. It's going to be up to Fleet Command to make those decisions. But it's important for everybody to know, First Fleet units are active units. And if there's just no gameplay happening there and people just aren't doing anything within them, then we'll shut them down, because there's no reason to maintain something if it's not active. And one of the critical elements of a First Fleet unit is that people want to play it. So we're not going to end up with 300 different units because one person has an idea for what they want it to be and they want to be in charge. You've got to have people that want to follow and be a part of something in order for it to be considered to be a unit.
I want to add one thing onto that. If a unit ever has to be shut down because we're not getting any sort of gameplay from it, that does not mean it's shut down permanently. If we come across a situation where we can actually utilize that unit again, and we have people that are interested, by all means, we will bring it right back.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, so each unit, I mean, there's a lot that we can do. We can change the remit of it if there's issues, to try and change how it goes towards that gameplay. We can bring in new leadership. There's a lot of different elements, but the main one, just to reiterate what Gooch said, is they are active units with active leadership, in-game leadership. So that I just wanted that to be 100% clear, and that is kind of just set out from the beginning, because it's just to be 100% on that. So active leadership and in-game units, and that's the whole purpose of it. But if people have an idea for a new unit, definitely do a write-up. If you've got some people to do it, I mean, I might be skeptical of the particular idea. There's a new one that's going to be coming about transporting people, but there is a group that wants to do it. And we can definitely give it a go. And if it's, as long as it stays active and people are enjoying that gameplay, we can definitely give it a go. So we're not going to be too hard-ass about making units. Long as it doesn't, just a replica of another unit, and long as there's a, clear gameplay for it, clear number of people that wants to do it, and they're going to be doing it in game, and it's an active unit, we're up for giving it a go, guys. So do the write-ups, and we can review that.
Laro, that question there about promotion, it's just a whole separate conversation. Yes, we're thinking about it. We want to talk more about it, but I don't want to get into it right now just because we're trying to stay focused here. We're coming up on our end time here. Does anybody else have any other questions they don't feel like have been addressed so far?
I have a quick announcement I want to make while people are typing stuff up. For anybody in the Academy program, anybody who's an instructor trainee, instructor, or a director, we will have a little meeting after this. It should be much shorter than this town hall has been. But it's surrounding changes that are coming to the Academy program. Now, Academy members are not just the only people allowed to join. Anybody who wants to join who may be interested in the Academy program in some way, shape, or form, feel free to hop in as well. In fact, we'll probably use the same town hall channel.
Daya just asked, is the slideshare going to be available? Yeah, I'm going to export this as a PDF and we'll share this out. So we'll make it available as well as the recording.
Yeah, we can attach files to posts on the site as well, Gooch. So
Nebula, we think the new unit pages will come out today. There will be some more stuff that's going to come, you guys. So like a really good example being like the current org chart page is going to start looking a little bit funky when we start removing some of the structure there. So, you know, we expect that some of that as we kind of figure out exactly how it ends up manifesting, you know, expect some of that stuff to be a little bit weird for a little bit, but we'll get there. So we're working on it.
Also, the unit page is live in the taskbar now. So if you haven't signed up for any units yet, you can go through and sign up. If you're already part of a unit, congratulations. Your UCs have mostly already put you in.
Yep. So you guys that aren't, go out, start looking at those units. You know, have a glance in there. Go in. You know, check out the First Fleet pages. You know, ask questions. Talk to your officers within your wings. You know, tell them what gameplay you're interested in. You know, there's again, we'll share out some of these visualizations, which you know they're not perfect. You know, but they definitely help a little bit to drive us toward things. Like a really good example of a place where I have nowhere near as much detail as I need is on Defiant, right? Like if you look at Defiant down here, it looks like it's a cached and bombing, you know, dropship gunship group, and that's not anywhere, you know, like that's not even close to, you know, showing the amount of stuff that you get with Defiant. I would say it's, you know, part of overwhelming power though, right? But it really needs to be up here under air superiority as well. You know, and it needs its own circle. It's just sometimes these things get a little bit there's just too many damn circles, and making them work is impossible. But yeah.
Here's a great question, because I like the answer for this, which is Guizable asked, where does medtech fit? And Tal said everywhere. Everyone needs a medic. And more specifically, what it is any unit that supposedly needs medics will have medic people within it and train for how medics work within their unit. And just because you're in medtech doesn't mean you have to go beck and call because, you know, Witcher has a combat medic role. You sign up for Witcher if you want to do Witcher style combat medic. You sign up for one of the larger ships if you're going to be manning, you know, the med bay on a ship. So that's the answer. Is it's not where do these units fit? Where do these wings fit? Because these wings apply across all sorts of different gameplay.
Yeah, if you guys are still watching my screen,
in Witcher
Unity
we have Avatar from a medtech, but he had to become a Witcher to do it. And so I mean, like they were saying earlier, every unit is probably going to have one of their own guys be a medic and whatnot.
And we have the Unity. The Unity right now is a medtech support ship. It's captained and commanded by a medtech officer. Right now, as far as SAR for search and rescue, it's going to be that the search and rescue group will be attached to the Unity, but you know, there will come a point where we have some other gameplay capabilities that come available to us in the form of some new ships that are coming. And when those better hospital ships that allow us to do better search and rescue as a specific unit come about, then we'll spin up an dedicated SAR group. And that stuff will happen more. But for now, the decision was to just embed it inside of Unity, since Unity, you'll need Unity capital ships in order to have access to the right beds. So, you know, but like these guys said, medics fit everywhere. They're part of every single one of these groups, and every single event that we have ever ran. We need medics. We need that support group, that support structure from MedTech in order to be there.
Okay, Barabay is asking, can they make multiple copies of the same unit? For example, maybe want to be in Witcher, but the time zone prevents them playing with Unit and the other guys in Witcher. Well, actually, Witcher has QP in it, which is US based, and Unit is UK based. And Unit actually stayed up in the last one from 2 a.m. his time until 6 a.m. for the last org v org.
Unit is all time zones. Yeah.
He's all time zones. But yeah, I mean that would be the purpose, right? We're an international org, so build out the units. That's a good idea. Then you go in there. Hopefully, you can go up towards leadership. And if you happen to be, I mean, the Witcher is all time zones clearly, but for the other ones, if it happens to be that they're all US, that's a good idea. Get in there, start building it up, because all of the units are all time zones, and that's the idea. So we just need more people in there and to build up. So we wouldn't make two of the same units just to operate at different time zones. It'd still be Witcher, and all of the units will operate across all time zones. and we just need to build.
I
Like
did wanna
with the Vice
answer-
scenario, as soon as we actually find a competent pilot that's in the EU time zone, then we'll try to elevate them, into a leadership position. We just haven't found anybody yet.
Shots
We're still-
fired.
Damn, shots
I
fired.
did want to answer a question here from Diu because it kind of answers itself a little bit, which is Diu asks, so if you don't join fleet and are not a trainer, then you are limited in the org. Well, I mean, the question is, if you're not contributing to the org, then yeah, you're limited in the org, and that's fine. It's absolutely fine if folks should join on in and play casually with us, hop into public for a while. That's totally cool. But like you said, if you don't join fleet and are not a trainer, I mean, there are other ways you can contribute to that maybe we haven't captured as well. If you're contributing though to the org in any way, whether that's you're in fleets, whether that's you're doing training, whether that's you're building certs, whether that's you're helping new folks really understand the game super well, we will see that contribution, and then you're not limited. But there's no limiting. Like when someone gets a rank, that's not saying cool, you've advanced in the org. All that is just a mark showing like, hey, thanks, we see that you're contributing to the org. And if they stop contributing, then, cool, the rank goes away, and that's absolutely fine. So you're not limited in any ways. Instead, think about it as you're going to be recognized for what you do for the org. Okay?
So Naz just made a good point. It feels like this is real life first being thrown under the bus. And this is something that goes back to the very beginning for us. That we're basically saying that if you're not active, then you're going to get put into the we're going to put you in this inactive group. Your Discord privileges will be limited. Your rank will degrade, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, that is the inverse of that is that you permanently get to sit inside of the position that you're in, and all of the people who want to do something that are looking to you for leadership are not receiving that leadership, and therefore your group atrophies and dies. And that is an unacceptable way forward. So if you guys need to do something for real life, there is no hard feelings in this organization, right? And we have seen this happen where commanders, people who have worked their way all the way to the very top, just couldn't put the time into it anymore. And so they very, very gracefully and elegantly ensured that there was a progression, or that there was a group that came in behind them to take over their leadership, and that they were then able to step down and move away. And that is perfectly acceptable, and it's what we expect from our officers and from our people, that if you can't do the job that you're in the place for because it's become too stressful or your real life is stopping you from being able to do it, then you need to step away from that and allow somebody else to come in so that the org can continue to grow. And so what happens here is that as you watch, this kind of ebb and flow where somebody's in charge and then somebody else gets to be in charge, that's actually a very healthy thing for an organization, to have new leadership come in and play, where it brings new energy forward and offers up new opportunities for people. Where, having somebody come into a leadership position that just stays in that position forever but doesn't do anything with it, that's very unhealthy towards the organization as a whole.
I think, didn't we just recently have one like founding unit commander who's doing a great job, but just like real life got busy, and he's like, hey, I'd like to nominate so and so for Ascension, and they step back down just being a member because they know they're not going to be around to lead it, and that's totally fine. Yeah, that was legal.
Yep. Another great, one of my favorite examples of this is Tal Adro, right? Tal used to be a wing commander. He couldn't do it anymore. His life changed. He stepped away. He spent 1, maybe even 2 years away from the organization. He came back, joined a different wing, and he plays, for Initiative now. And that's perfect, right? There's nobody's holding it against you if you have to step away. But if you can no longer do the thing that if you no longer can do what you're trying to do within the group that you're playing with, then you have to just take a step back, and that's fine, right? And that's part of the drive towards recognizing people through the commendation system, and through their levels within their first fleet units, and so on and so forth, is to drive it away from this idea that the only thing that matters is what your rank is, and if somebody takes your rank away, then you're getting screwed because now the recognition is gone.
I'm looking forward to the day where you'll see some guy, he's a talent adept, you don't see him on very often, and it's like he gave a lot of his time to the org, and you look at his goddamn page and you're like, holy shit, this dude is a veteran who kicks ass. You're gonna have a lot of respect for that guy, even if he's currently dealing with running a family and the job and everything else like that, and had to step back a couple of years ago. Because we're in this for the long haul. None of us are going to be able to keep up the burden that we have now. We don't know what life is going to look like in 5 years. We just do what we can when we can do it.
One of the-
Ghost, to answer the question that Ghost, sorry, QP, go ahead.
Thanks. One of the reasons we're implementing this too is because it actually, when if you look at the other side of this, it spreads elitism. If somebody stays in a group, and basically isn't there anymore, but is the group's only existent when they have the time to do it. It starts to further that elitism kind of thing, and so this is actually going to help negate it as well, along with command, like H2O was saying and Alexia were saying, along with fleet command being able to observe it as well. That's part of their job, is to prevent stuff like that from happening.
Oh yeah,
Go ahead.
H2O just said it. The response to the question about whether or not this affects the VLC, and the answer is absolutely it affects the VLC. If you can no longer perform your duties within the Vanguard Leadership Council, then you will be stepped down. Our
It's happened.
Yeah, Draco Hart is the founder of this organization, and he is currently a Talon Adept. Randrick is just sitting in I think Randrick is at a Talon Adept rank now as well, and is no longer, even though I think they're still technically tagged as VLC because of their, founding level status, they've deranked and they've shifted completely out of any sort of leadership within the organization. So if I quit, walk away, and I'm no longer able to do my duty, then I'm going to start degrading.
I will literally. I think everybody on the VLC can say this about each other. If we no longer can do it, we're not going to do it. We're gonna step down. Absolutely. If there comes a time, I will definitely step down. In fact,
there are
I
some
kind of look.
days
Is it weird? I look
wish
forward to it.
step down.
You know.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's funny because it's like we said in the presentation, right? This new direction isn't going to solve every problem we have, right? And a lot of the questions and the things that are rising, they're literally the same questions and the same concerns that we've had since the very, very beginning. The number of times I've seen is VLC going to be held to the same standard question that has come from the very, very beginning. It's always been a question. Ranks representing, where you should be in terms of leadership and who you should listen to. These questions have existed since the very beginning. None of this is going to fix all of that, and it's not going to be perfectly crystal clear, but it is going to help a lot, right? We're going to move into a world where I will know, based on the first fleet units that you're within and the things that you do for those units, where you sit and what your capabilities are within this game. And it's going to help us in terms of planning for battles and so on and so forth. And you guys within your first fleet units are going to be very, very aware of the other people within your unit and what they're doing, because you're going to be, in an ideal world, you're going to be playing together all the time. Right? That's the point. These units are about playing. They're about getting into the game and focusing on the gameplay. And we're going to continue this month-on, month-off policy in terms of paperwork. March is a month-off paperwork month, and so what we want to see from our officers is no cert writing, none of the, just not worrying about any of the SOPs and that sort of thing. We want people just getting into the game and playing. We're going to try to make sure that their events are happening and there's fun opportunities for everybody to play. And we just want people in there and we want to play.
Yes, we are aware that coincides with 3.18 launch. Don't worry about it.
Also, just to add about, I can see people saying about the stepping down being harsh and this and that. There's always a conversation that's had, guys. And it's not like if you don't turn up to an event one weekend, all your ranks are removed and you're put in the thing. It's not that. It's not like that. What we're saying is, it's if people's circumstances in life change, and then it seems that for the future that they're not going to be able to do what they were currently doing, that's when we need to have that conversation. Sometimes people go through family circumstances, someone unfortunately passes away, or something good, a birth of twins or whatever the situation is. We can discuss it, and then it might be, oh, we need to see, I've just had a child now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to play so much. And it's like, oh, should we just leave it a month, and then we can see. These conversations are going to be had in the background. And it does happen occasionally, we can just never get like a reply from them anymore, they've just fallen over the face, then eventually you're just going to have to remove them, and then we'll have the conversation when they do come back. And that has to be done, because it causes discontent if someone comes into the game, they're active for they might be here 2-3 months, that's the whole time that they've been here, and they don't know who the leaders are and so forth. It just stifles the growth, it stifles the gameplay. And then equally, that's for kind of people moving into leadership and so forth. If you want to be a more casual player, Gooch was talking about, knows what you can achieve in this, in the fleet. There are people that might not want to go to be vice and become, L3. They just want to come in and they want to be in a casual group like Cosmonites that is showing there. And then you just want to come, Thursday night, pop open a beer, play with the lads, do some raiding, and that might even really help us. You get some rail guns, and then that goes towards one of the fleet battles and so forth like that. You may get the badge for helping support that event because of the contributions you did, but you did it in a very laid back, relaxed way, and you're not really having to worry about all these progression and so forth. So that isn't going to be for everyone, and we don't want to force it. This is really to give the agency to all of the players to play the game the way you want to play it, while coming together to achieve something impressive and spectacular as an all combined. That's what we're trying to go for here.
So H2O hit it right on the head. The problem is when people stop communicating completely and disappear. We can work something out. We would prefer to talk with you and chat about it, and we can, and you don't have to tell us your life, what's going on. But if you've got a real issue, come talk to us. I'm in chat every day, so feel free to send me a DM or whatever, or just come talk to us about it. Keep up that communication, and usually we can work it out. It's usually not a problem. It's just when somebody is in a position of leadership and then they ghost the org, and then that's when we start seeing problems.
Yep. And also, when it comes to this rank degradation thing, if you can't do it anymore, then degrade yourself. The day that I am no longer able to perform my job as a vice marshal, I will step myself down to where I can be that makes sense for me. And that way it's always in your control. If you just can't do it and you can't play and you can't be there, then remove the stress and the pressure from yourself and just go be a talent of depth. And when the time comes, you can work your way back into some other position, right? And find your place. It's what Tal did, and it's graceful, and it's it's great because it allows somebody else to step up and have their chance at that leadership position, and it keeps fresh energy and fresh people going into these different places they need to be. Naz, with specific regards to your question about Rangers, so Rangers as a group within security is being dissolved. If there is a specific type of gameplay that Rangers is doing that is not being represented inside of a First Fleet unit, that's where we sit down and we figure out, okay, what is it that Rangers is doing that we're not capturing in any of these other units, and if we need to, then we'll stand up a unit to reflect that.
I do want to talk very briefly on what a unit is and what it isn't, because people do have questions about this. As Gooch has been saying, as Alexi has been saying, if there is discrete gameplay that you see is not covered within the units, and it doesn't, you think, fall in as an addition to an existing unit, please propose that. We think the current ones cover pretty well what's in gameplay. There's probably one or two missing. I think we were talking about where does SAR fit in, for example? Do they just base on Unity and do their own thing, etc.? But we think these are covered pretty clearly. But if you have clear, specific gameplay, and you have a clear path for how to train that up on people, come talk to us. We'll get it built out with you.
Also, right now, Rangers is spread across Witcher, the functions that Rangers did are now Witcher, Moon. Well, Witcher, Moon, and Nighthawks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Naz, I'm not really sure why that would be part of the conversation, right? That somebody would throw in the towel, because all we're saying is that if the gameplay is something that we have people that are doing it, and there's a group that wants to do it, then they can do that inside of First Fleet. Then come talk to us about it. It would make me sad if anybody decided to walk away without having a conversation, and figuring out what's next, right? Like, the entire point is to make sure that people aren't feeling left behind, and that we have the things that need to be covered in within these existing units. And we have created like 5 new units in the last 4 days to make sure that we're covering this stuff. And so now here we are, we're rolling this out to the organization. If there are folks who want to make sure that they're this group that they have that's playing together, that's doing a thing, continues to be represented and has a place, then that place is in First Fleet. So come talk to us about what that is. And that goes for everybody here, right? If you guys have some group of friends that is going, and you guys are always doing the same thing, and you guys want to talk about creating a First Fleet unit, then get that idea out in front of the fleet. All right, we are 7 minutes past our allotted time for this. I have to go take care of my children, who have been increasing the pressure on me from behind, and need to be fed and whatnot. So let's go ahead and end for today. And again, this can continue to be a conversation. We'll get the video shared, we'll get the deck shared, and we'll start rolling out these changes over the course of the next couple of weeks. But the big thing is that nobody should feel abandoned or left behind here. If you don't feel like there's a place for you in the current structure that exists within First Fleet units, then come talk to us about why that is, and what you guys think we should do differently, and how we should potentially change it. Okay? And thanks to everybody. We had, I think at the top, I actually saw us hit 90 people at one point, which is super awesome. 92? Yeah, that's great.
We will be starting up the Academy meeting very, very soon. I'm going to give people a little bit of a break, go use the restroom, grab some snacks, grab some drinks, relax a tiny bit, and then we'll probably start up close to 5, or like 20 minutes.
H2, do we want to use this, or do we want to just to minimize confusion, spin up another chat under VNG comms?
I think I would like to use this room, because we will pull people who have questions onto the stage to talk. That way we don't have people talking over each other.
Also, in case anybody's wondering, in this entire presentation of everything that was worked on here, this is by far and beyond my favorite slide. This is the one. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. An hour and 40 minutes talking about this, a long time, but the conversation will continue. We'll keep working on it, and this org is going to grow. So thanks, everybody.
Oh, and we will be having another Academy meeting tomorrow for the EU guys that can't join today. So EU guys, feel free to head to bed.